talk about the receivers, and let's start with Cooper Kupp. I know you want to have a Cooper Kupp conversation here, and I'm willing to definitely do that, and I'll share kind of my thoughts on his season last year, going back and charting him for reception perception. But first of all, just injury-wise with Cooper Kupp here, Edwin, where are we at after a lot of stuff the last few seasons?
All right, let me walk you through the 2023 story of Cooper Kupp. August 1st, 2023, injured hamstring in camp. August 31st, had a hamstring setback. Weeks 1 through 4, out due to the hamstring strain. Okay, now this is where you guys want to start paying attention, listeners. Week 5 and 6, Kupp averages 20 points per game, half PPR. This is all half PPR. Week 7, Puka erupts for 154 yards. Kupp scores 5.9 points. Week 8, Stafford injures his thumb, leaves the game, also misses week 9. In both of those games, right, Kupp scores 4.1, 5.8 points. Puka scores 4.3, 3.2 points. Week 11, Kupp injures his ankle, scores 1.3 points. Week 12, Kupp scores 3.3 points. Puka scores 2.7. Okay, so that's sort of the frame. That's the first 3 quarters of the season. From weeks 13 to 17, Kupp averages 14.8 points, finishes as wide receiver 11 on a points per game basis. Obviously, Puka finishes as a wide receiver 3. There's no denying the context of the Rams offense has changed. That's what I want you to get into. I want to hear your expertise and hear what you have to say about that, right? But how exactly has that impacted Kupp? Primarily what we saw is that from a team target share perspective, Kupp was still right in the neighborhood. Those last 4 weeks, he was at 24.6 and Puka was just around 23. The biggest change, this is per fantasy points data, the biggest thing wasn't the target share, it was the air yard share. Cooper Kupp saw a 20% air yard share. Puka Nacua saw somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it was 30%, right? So that was where I think most of the conflict came when they were both on the field and healthy, and Stafford was healthy. What I'm saying here, though, Matt, is that Cooper Kupp's going off as like wide receiver 28, I believe it is, or something like that. He's the last Triple Crown winner, Super Bowl MVP. We know he's a freaking nut job when it comes to working and staying in shape and doing everything he can. There was like some there's some article, or I don't even remember what it was. Something about like Puka trained with him in the first 2 weeks. Puka threw up like every workout for 2 weeks or something with Cooper Kupp. Like there's something crazy out there like that. Like incredible. So all of those things in the context, keeping the context in mind. So then listeners are probably like, well, he's 31 years old, and he had a hamstring strain. Boy, if only there was someone we could learn a lesson from who set the precedent for a 31-year-old wide receiver coming off a severe hamstring strain, who, myself included, and everybody else faded, only for him to go on and have a wide receiver 3 season on a points per game basis. Keenan Allen, looking at you. If only there was a precedent for that. I will take a mea culpa on me. I want to talk about everything I'm right about. I was super wrong on Keenan Allen. He came back and I was super wrong on him. So he's already set the precedent that even though there's a 33% re-injury rate in hamstrings amongst wide receivers, which is, by the way, the highest recurrence rate of every injury amongst all skill players, he can still do it, right? Kupp can still ball. These elite guys, they don't just fall off a cliff. I understand there is some risk involved, but we know right now, Cooper Kupp, in my opinion, is being drafted at his floor, right? That's not something that I'm confident will happen. And if you look, and this is the last thing, then I want to hear your thoughts here, Matt. So over the last 4 weeks of the season, like I said, Puka finished wide receiver 5, Kupp finished wide receiver 11. I mean, just some wide receiver tandems. Just let's say since, in 2023, you had Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. They finished wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 25. Debo and Ayuk, wide receiver 9, wide receiver 14. And you look at 2022, right? Same thing. Tyreek and Waddle, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 13. You're telling me that we can't get you're telling me at worst we're going to get a Mike Evans and Chris Godwin from 2022, which a wide receiver 14 and a wide receiver 20 finish. Like, I think Puka and Kupp, especially with Sean McVay, one of the best offensive minds in football, I think we can get somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2 top 12 wide receivers from this offense, regardless of the current situation with Cooper Kupp. I have gotten more and more excited about Cooper Kupp. I know he's rising right now, but I still think his ADP is too low. I would say Cooper Kupp, because of his body of work and what we know and the precedent and the data that we're looking at, I think that he deserves to be a finalist in this conversation. But again, I want your thoughts.
Okay, so just number one, what I love about this potential receiver duo is that I think it is going to be a highly, highly concentrated offense. Because two things. One, I think they're going to play more 12 personnel this year. I know that Tyler Higbee's coming off an injury, but they signed Colby Parkinson to a pretty decent deal. I liked a couple of the very, very brief flashes from Davis Allen, rookie tight end last year. Hopefully no one in my Scott Fishbowl league is listening because I want to take him with my last pick, Davis Allen. I almost took him earlier, but then I was like, I feel like I can get this guy in the last round. Anyways, it's a whole other thing. No one cares.
Get your guy, Matt. Get your guy.
No one cares about my, I'm not saying Davis Allen is my guy. Okay, I'm just saying like I want to take him in the Scott Fishbowl draft, and
you should
nobody
chart
cares.
him.
I'm about to kick you off this podcast. Don't do that again. That's your last warning. But okay, so Cooper Kupp, by the way, speaking of like tight end stuff, Cooper Kupp has always been like borderline slot receiver, does some tight end things. I think if the closest thing I've charted to a tight end is maybe Cooper Kupp or Allen Lazard, honestly, which is a chart I regret doing. Anyway, so Cooper Kupp last year, you look at his success rates, first of all. Man coverage success rate is definitely down from the previous two seasons where he won the Triple Crown and then in 2022 when he was still super productive. It's down to like 65% from 70.6% in 2022. But his success rate for his zone number is still really good, 83.3%. It's not at the crazy high highs that it was in that 21 season, which that 91.4% is the second highest I've ever charted. I think it's fair to lower the expectations down to 83.3%, which is still, by the way, very good and right in line with like his 2019 and 2020 season. His success rate versus press is actually still within the range of where it was in 22. So we're definitely looking at a diminished player last year, but I think that Keenan Allen, who we both were wrong about, we've just said, I think he was more diminished in that 22 season, which scared me off of his 23 season, which that was more of like an NFL take than a fantasy take, or at least that's what it should have been. Honestly, I was wrong about that for sure. So, but I think Kupp was better last year than Keenan Allen was on film from a zone beating perspective, especially, which is important because to me, I think Puka's the one on this team. Like that's going to be settled and done in my estimation. I think he's going to be the top receiver. He will be the top receiver, but I think there's a big room for Cooper Kupp to be that complementary threat here, but it is going to come in some different ways. Like you mentioned, the air yards were down for Cooper Kupp last year. I think that's going to remain the case because you look at the routes that Cooper Kupp ran, his slant route percentage is way up. His flat route percentage is way up. The screens are down because he's not the design target guy anymore. But where he can still make some big plays, Edwin, corner routes, out routes, those success rates were still really high as well. So I do think he is a diminished player for sure. And look, I always say with older receivers, I'm least confident forecasting the age cliff. Like history has taught us that with reception perception, but still, I do think there's enough on film from Cooper Kupp to say like, oh, this is a guy that we can bet on having a really quality season in what, like I said, what could be a very highly concentrated offense. And anybody that does like work with yards per route run or per route data would say like these 12 personnel teams that mostly run two receivers, the yards per route run is going to be higher. And I think that's going to be the case with these Rams players because they want to run the ball at a high clip and at a high efficiency clip.
Yes, 100%. So that makes me feel a lot better about what you're saying because I think right now he's being drafted. Those two are being drafted as if it's mutually exclusive that one has to have a big season without the other one. I don't think that's the case. I'll go on record and say I think they can still especially based on what you just said. There's no reason why, especially with Matt Stafford healthy, Sean McVay on the sticks. I don't think would we really be shocked if we looked up and they're both top 10, top 12 wide receivers? Like I wouldn't be that shocked. And all of the data that you're looking at and like reception perception charting him and stuff like that was through a hamstring strain, through an ankle sprain, right? So even if he is diminished,
I'll throw one more piece of context here too. The sample got better and better the farther we got like through the season. Like the later season games were much better from a separation or route running standpoint than the early part of the season.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we would say. Like if we were going to really say like Kupp is, or any aging receiver is deteriorating, we probably I think it stands to reason we would probably expect that to go the opposite direction. So I mean, I really like Kupp. I think that he was dealt a really crappy hand last season, and I would love if Mr. Receiver, if the receiver guy, big receiver, CEO, CFO,
Big receiver.
would waive Cooper Kupp in S finals.